Am I good? Yeah.
We are now live.
Good evening and Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is the January 9th, 2023 Board of Education meeting. Before we begin, as always, if you could please take a minute and make sure your phones are on silent, any watches on silent, just to avoid interrupting the meeting and interrupting any speakers we may have. And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Mr. Hatfield, let's start with roll call.
All right, President McFarland.
Here.
Vice President Roush.
Here.
Secretary Hatfield is here. Treasurer Lauterbach is not here. Member Baker.
Here.
Member Blasey.
Here.
Member Ringgold.
Here.
Okay. Phil and Jen, if you could join me up front. We'll do the oath of office. If anybody wants to come forward and take pictures, please feel free. You don't have to stand up or shoot around somebody. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state.
and the Constitution of this state,
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of Midland Public Schools,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of Board of Education, Midland Public Schools,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Okay. Next up, Phil, this is you.
Yep. So item number 2 for action, election of the temporary chairperson. Make a motion to appoint Scott McFarland as the temporary chairperson for the organizational meeting.
I support.
Motion by Phil, support by Mr. Hatfield. Any discussion regarding item 2? All in favor?
Aye.
I may have stepped in here.
You're good.
Opposed? Okay. All right, so I will take it from here. Next up, we have item 3. This is an information-only identification of the district's legal status. Under the revised school code MCL 380.1 et sec, the district's legal status was defined as General Powers School District effective July 1, 1996. Next up, we have an action item. This is election of the officers of the board. The election of officers of the board is outlined in Board Policy 2506, a 3-person Board of Education nominating committee submitted a proposed slate of officers for 2023. The proposed slate is as follows: President Scott McFarland, Vice President Phil Roush, Secretary Mr. John Hatfield, Treasurer John Lauterbach. Are there any write-ins or additional proposals before we vote on the slate? Hearing none, all in favor? I'm sorry, I'll take a motion first.
Make a motion to approve the slate of officers as outlined in agenda item number 4.
I'll support that motion.
Motion by Mr. Roush, support by Mr. Hatfield. Now, any discussion regarding the proposed slate? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We have our approved slate. Thank you very much. All right, next up is information only. As you can see in the agenda, this is the appointment for study committees. I don't think we need to read through everything here. If you want to see it, just take a look at the agenda. We, as a committee, were able to, I think, meet everybody's request in the polling. And so, any additional questions or change requests, just please see me afterwards or at any point. Next up, item 6, we have another action item, scheduled meetings for a 2023 calendar year. You can see all the dates listed there through December 18, 2023. Please note April 17th is our budget workshop. The meeting will begin at 6:30 p.m. And that's really it for anomalies on the dates. That said, I will take a motion for approval of the 2023 calendar year.
I will move that we approve agenda item number 6 for scheduled meetings for the 23 calendar year.
Support?
Motion by Mr. Hatfield, support by Mr. Roush. Any additional discussion regarding item 6? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, in a long list of action items tonight, we have item 7.1. This is appointment of the Board of Education's legal counsel. And the firm of Truen Law Firm, PC, has been designated as the board's legal counsel. In addition to the superintendent, is authorized to retain specialized legal counsel through other legal firms as appropriate. It is recommended that the board approve legal representation as outlined through December 31, 2023. And with that, I will accept the motion for item 7.1.
Make a motion to approve Thurman Law Firm PC as the board's legal counsel.
Support?
Right. Motion by Mr. Roush, support by Mrs. Ringgold. Any discussion regarding item 7.1? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Moving right along, item 7.2, fiscal designations and authorizations. Mr. Sharrow.
As you know, we've been using Huntington Bank since the transition occurred, and so we were recommending that the board designate Huntington Bank as well as other public depositories in accordance with Midland codified law as our bank of deposits. So our business partner does a good job of checking around for rates and interest rates on that, but right now Huntington's still treating us very well.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve Huntington Bank as our depository.
I'll support.
Motion by Mr. Roush, support by Mr. Hatfield. Any additional discussion regarding item 7.2? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next action item is personnel authorizations. Mr. Sharrow.
This is the annual authorization that you give to me to be your designee on any legal document relating to personnel. So hiring, resignations, retirements, throughout that as the action item states there for you.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the superintendent for personnel authorizations.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Roush, support by Mr. Hatfield. Any additional discussion regarding item 7.3? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next up, item 7.4, hard cap for employees' medical benefit plan. Mr. Bruton.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Each year, the board must affirm that it is going to abide by the limits set by statute in regards to expenses on employee medical benefit plans. There's two ways in which you can do that. One is following the 80%, 20% rule, or you can abide by the hard cap limits, which change annually based on consumer price index. Midland Public Schools has historically used those hard cap limits, and we're asking that the board reaffirm that we'll be using those hard cap limits to set our medical expenditure limits for.
Okay, thank you. I will accept the motion.
I move that we approve item 7.4, the hard cap for employees' medical benefit plan.
Support?
Motion by Mr. Hatfield, support by Mrs. Baker. Any discussion regarding item 7.4?
Brian, is this bargained for at all with our employee groups?
It is not a subject of bargaining,
Okay.
allowed subject of bargaining. It's
Okay.
one or the other for you to choose.
Okay.
Hard cap is probably 98% of the districts in the state. It's always benefited districts. There are some exceptions, and we may be approaching that time where it could be beneficial one year or the other on that. But I would not necessarily change for 1 year of that.
Mhm.
It would have to be a trend going forward.
Okay.
Any additional comments, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we have item 7.5. This is administrative assistant authorization. Mr. Sherrill.
Yeah, this is where you authorize me to designate Sarah to assist with any school election going forward, so with the schools, with the secretary of the board. And there was a time where schools completely ran their elections, and so this was a big duty. And then about 10, 12 years ago, we aligned with even year elections, that kind of has dwarfed to a smaller job, and there's still roles we have to do in it, from swearing of office and documents turned in, but it's a much smaller role. So, and Sarah's pretty schooled on it already.
Okay, thank you. I'll accept the motion for 7.5.
Make sure I say this correctly. So I'll make a motion to approve Mike that he can designate Sarah as this administrative assistant to the Board of Education for election matters.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Roush, support by Mrs. Ringgold. Any additional discussion regarding item 7.5? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, that moves us into our consent agenda. Item 8.1 is approval of the minutes from December 19, 2022. 8.2 is a list of staff being recommended for hire. 8.3 is staff that has announced their resignation as well as the effective dates. 8.4 is approval of the school system's bills for the month of November in the amount of $9,378,943. And item 8.5 is approval to pay a legal fee in the amount of $175. And I'll accept the motion for the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda and items number 8.1 through 8.5.
I support.
Motion
You may be recognizing by now, this is a subcontracted firm that does the visa requirements for our teachers that we've hired from overseas. So this would be our Mandarin teacher, and he's in the process of now getting his full residency and green card.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Any additional discussion regarding item 8.5?
The .7 FTE instead of .1, was that the employee's election?
Yeah, I think it was, and we were able to prove it. So there's times where, through the year that the employee will request that, and if we can, we will. When we do staffing in the spring, there's times that we do only see a need for a .8 or a .7 that we do that. Sometimes we have to round up a little bit to get to the status to be able to hire, though. If you get too low of a partial employment, we're not going to find the people.
Okay.
Mr. Brewer, did you want to add to that?
It's a Title I funded position, and sometimes the FTE align to the funding that's available. And we
Okay.
disclose to the employee up front, even in the postings, what those FTEs are going to be. And Mr. Sherrill's right, based on available funding, sometimes amendment times those shift back and forth.
Okay. Thanks.
Any additional comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, that takes us to item 9.1, state and federal grant update.
While she's preparing, you may or may not recognize Kim. So Kim is new to us, starting last summer, and so she is working with Penny's office on state and federal grants. So she's very, very schooled on that, and was when we had hired her. So you're going to hear a little bit about how we're using those funds to intervene and increase student academic success. All yours, Kim.
Welcome, Kim, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me tonight and being interested in how Midland Public Schools is utilizing and leveraging the many pots of supplemental funds that are coming to our district. Our first slide is, there we go, excuse me. Okay. I'm going to highlight.
Can you move the microphone over to you?
Yeah, is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know. I'm going to start off by highlighting the supplemental funds that we received directly from the state of Michigan, and then I'll highlight federal funds, and then I'll go through and describe how we determine how to utilize those funds, and then highlight some of our programs that we have at each level. Okay? All right, so my first slide here just kind of sets up the stage. ESSER formula funds was that first round of supplemental funds from the federal government for schools to help mitigate the circumstances around COVID-19. Those funds have expired. The state of Michigan did have a large pot of money left, and so they are repurposing those funds for a one-time additional state fund opportunity for us. So you'll see those highlighted on the next slides. All right, our annual funds, I do want to mention, from the state of Michigan, typically run from October until September 30th of each year. Federal funds have slightly different timelines, so I did just want to highlight that to begin with. We have 98C funds. These are to help support and improve learning loss as a result of the pandemic. We learned about this fund last fall, around September. It is estimated that we should receive an allocation of about $37 per student. That is if every school district across the state of Michigan applies for these funds. So we are anticipating that dollar amount to be a little larger. Again, those funds are going to be used to help support academic needs across the district. The ARP Homeless 2 grant is another supplemental fund. This money specifically targets students who are experiencing homelessness. So we've worked with our McKinney-Vento liaison to decide how best to leverage these funds to support our needs of our most fragile students. Okay, we do have some AP and IB reimbursements. The board did approve ESSER funds to pay for most of those. If the district wants to apply to have a portion of that money come back, we can certainly do so. We did receive a grant. It's kind of a bundled grant, and I apologize. On my previous slide, I had these separated. 31AA is a supplemental grant specifically meant for supporting social emotional learning and student mental health. Grant 97 is a grant that is meant for school safety infrastructure. That is what the district used to pay for the Evolve systems at our secondary schools. And then 97C and 97D is the school safety assessment and mapping grant. Sorry, it's not projecting. Is it laggy? There we go. Okay, continuing on with state funds. The state does receive Section 31A, or at-risk funds. This is a grant that is reoccurring. Every year the state, or Midland Public Schools receives Section 31A funds. These funds are specifically meant to support students that are at risk. Students qualify as at risk on indicators set forth by the legislation, and we can only provide services to students that meet those criteria. This is the first year that Midland Public Schools will receive 100% funding of state at-risk funds, so we're really excited to see how we may be able to leverage those dollars to increase student achievement. Section 35A5 is a grant that's been around probably for about 8 to 10 years. It is also an additional grant, and this pot of money is specifically targeting students in grades K through 3 and supporting them achieving reading by grade 3. Section 41 is a bilingual grant. Again, a state grant, and this supplemental fund is meant to provide additional supports and services for students that are learning English as a second or third language. So English is not their first language, and you can only imagine how their needs are different from our general English-speaking student. Section 11T. This is a pot of money that was given to the state of Michigan after the state's ESSER 3 plan was approved. So the state was able to repurpose a portion of their ESSER funds, and they approved and passed a legislation, and the 11T equalization funds, pretty substantial amount. Those funds follow the same timeline as ESSER 3 funds, so those should be expired by September 30th, 2024. Almost done with state funds.
If you recall, we rallied hard for 11T because that was important to districts like ours. And then 31A at risk has been a battle we've been fighting a long time. Bill started with Jerry Wasserman and I, and Bill's been recently involved, and so we're finally there.
First Robotics has been alive and healthy in Midland Public Schools for years. This again is a state fund to support our First Robotics initiative. Explore Future Proud Michigan Educator Grant. There's a number of supporting our Grow Your Own Future Proud Michigan Educator Grants. We are applying for this particular supplemental fund to be able to start elective courses at the high school level so that students who may have shown interest in educational careers will have an opportunity to learn more about that and potentially do some volunteering and work with our elementary students. 31N6 is a supplemental grant that is received to provide mental health and student mental health supports. 98B is a benchmark assessment reimbursement. A few years ago, the state required Michigan schools to administer a benchmark assessment, and they are helping to reimburse school districts with these funds. We use NWEA here in Midland, and so these funds help offset the cost of that assessment. Okay, on to our federal funds, unless there's any questions about the state funds I've mentioned. Again, I'll just highlight that the timeline for our federal funds are slightly different from our state funds. Federal funds run from July to June 30th each year. Some of the federal funds actually have a 3-month carryover period, so it actually is 15 months instead of 12 months. Title I funds, you've probably have heard. Sorry, my slide was wrong. To support disadvantaged children meeting high academic standards. So the district has 2 school-wide Title I buildings where primarily those funds are used to support the needs of the students. Title II funds. Title II funds are meant to provide support and effective instruction and professional development for teachers and paraprofessionals and administrators. Title III funds are federal monies to support English learners. LEAs can only take advantage of these funds if they have an allocation of $10,000 or higher. If not, then they must join or create a consortium. So Midland Public Schools is in the Saginaw ISD consortium. So we have a little over $8,000 to help provide supplemental services for our English learner students. Previous years, we've helped to pay for a teacher on staff to earn his English second language endorsement. So that teacher has completed that process, and so now we're looking to see how we might be able to use those funds differently. Title IV dollars is another supplemental fund meant to support academic enrichment. Midland Public Schools chooses to transfer the funds to Title II. So again, that's the professional learning for staff and administrators. Again, that supplemental fund has been around for several years, and we hope it continues to stay around. Okay, these last few supplemental funds are really related to the coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security package. Like I mentioned earlier, we had the ESSER formula, which is the first one. That fund ended, so we have fully spent that amount. ESSER 2 also is spent. That money has to be spent by the end of June this year. We have that spent. And ESSER 3, we have on target to fully spend that amount by the deadline, September 30th, 2024. So, lots of money that we take very seriously in how we spend these dollars. So, our needs assessment summary, I'll just highlight a few of these areas. We focus primarily on academic support on English and language arts and math, additional learning opportunities and supports during the day and outside of the day during the summer. And we are looking to continue to strengthen our Tier 1 curriculum and instruction across the district. Social emotional learning and well-being, behavior support, and mental health support were part of the top areas of need. Teacher professional development. Didn't realize I wasn't clicking, sorry. Academic assessment, increase equity across the district was another need. Continued health and safety practices to mitigate COVID-19. And the large HVAC project at Northeast were among the top of our needs.
Could you, excuse me, confirm how the needs assessment was completed? How did we arrive at it?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
Yes, so again, this is my first year with the district, so I will, if I miss anything, look over my shoulder here for some help. But stakeholders were pulled together in various ways. We surveyed we had in-person work sessions. We communicated with our union representatives, administrators, teachers, leaders, coaches, paraprofessionals, family, community members, some surveys, and we had 2 in-person sessions that people were able to offer and give their ideas on how these support or monies will be leveraged to basically support the highest needs that we determine across the district.
Penny performed most of those at that time. So.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, now I will highlight some of the programs and supports that we have at each of the levels. I do want to mention that we carry out monthly monitoring meetings with each group. So we have an elementary monitoring meeting, a middle school and high school monitoring meeting each month. That gives them an opportunity to talk about and highlight areas of success and talk about needs, or maybe we need to pivot midterm and revisit some of the areas we have. So we have paraprofessionals, 1 at each school. We have retired interventionists. That's been a wonderful addition to our early supports. We have after-school tutoring and summer learning opportunities, social emotional learning specialists, and student support specialists. MPS Resiliency and RISE program, literacy curriculum materials to support core instruction. So we've been able to purchase new materials at the elementary level. And lots of classroom libraries. If you would have been here before Christmas, I think we might have had 7 pallets outside the curriculum office, and those are all now in the hands of little kids, so that's great.
Those interventions, they pull out and work academically. A real creative one there is the retirees. You know, you get retirees that have great skill sets going off in the wind. There's a way to pull them back in if we can, and we've had great response from our retirees working with our kiddos. So we got some very experienced teachers coming back, working a few hours a week with kids. I think that we're going to get good gains from that.
At our middle school level, we have added seminar classes for English, language arts, and math. So students that have shown a need in one or more of those areas take an English class and have an ELA seminar class. I heard from one middle school principal today that they're starting to see some really nice achievement scores for students that are in a seminar class, in addition to passing their general ed class as well. We've started after-school tutoring at the middle schools. Last year we had summer learning program. We're already starting to plan for this summer's program. We have school resource centers, full-time staff to support restorative practices. That's something that we feel that will continue to grow. This is the first year, but we want to keep our kids in school, and this is an opportunity for them to stay in school, be reflective, and then get back to class. We have a student support specialist, again, one per school, and learning coach at the middle schools as well. Learning coaches work directly with the classroom teachers to enhance and leverage evidence-based strategies to improve student learning. Now our high schools, you'll see some similarities. Those were the ones that I was going to highlight. So again, you'll see math seminar classes at the high school. We do not currently have ELA seminar classes, but math seminar classes are alive and well, and great data coming back from those. We have after-school tutoring at the high school. We've partnered with IEE to provide specific math interventions. Again, summer learning program at the high school level. We have lunchtime tutoring that started at Midland High School recently, and we're seeing some great success with students that are attending frequently. Again, social emotional learning specialists at the high schools and our learning coaches. We have school resource centers again at the high school, first year of that. Again, we're wanting to keep our kids at school and get back to class as soon as possible. And then we have our electronic learning facilitators as well that work with students in a virtual setting. Okay.
The last one, the APIB, that was the ones that you approved, some supplemental money to cover those fees?
Again, our next steps is to continue monitoring. Just had a monitoring meeting today, so it's nice to check in. It's nice to hear what the successes are and challenges are so we can course correct right away. Working to collect data and evaluate our programs, and we'll make changes as needed. I think that's it, unless you have any questions for me.
I'd throw couple things in for your questions. So she used the term categoricals. It's kind of a Michigan thing. And I'll tell you, in my 20 years as superintendent, when I first started, there was one categorical. Now there's so many that we have a hard time keeping track of them. It's a good and a bad. Brian, as a young administrator, once was, isn't it wonderful we're going to get these grants? And I'd always say, yes, it is, except for that money's most of the time coming just out of the general fund, and it comes with all kinds of restrictions and earmarks, and you're kind of taking a little bit of local control away. In this case, some of those weren't coming from the general fund, which was nice. Now, that means they will most likely go away. And so you have to, the trick is going to be, and I think it's going to cause a few of them in the back room some gray hair, they'll be dealing with it more than I, is when these go away, how do you sustain with research the ones that worked and then let which ones go, right? And that's always a little bit hard to do. No matter how you forewarn those who are getting services that these may not be here forever, we may have to tweak them or make them smaller. And then she used supplemental from the federal because that's another name from the federal government that comes. Part of my point in making that discussion is this field has grown so large for school districts that it has required somebody like Kim to assist us to keep track and make sure we're in compliance with all these things, because we'll get an audit, if you're out of compliance, it's not a good thing. And then we haven't received some of these funds yet, but we're hoping to receive them on this month's school aid fund, most of them, almost all of them. So we're yet to see those funds here, even your revolve grant funds that we bought them with, the funds aren't arrived yet, we hope to have them there, correct, Brian?
Yeah, if I could also just put a little finer point on a couple of pieces, and then I know Brian has some comments about the financials. We hope you could see from this presentation, thanks Kim, that we are really working intentionally to support student academic achievement. There are several activities that are in that social emotional learning space, but again, reminding you from Amanda's presentation a few meetings ago that really is also in support of academic learning. The complexity of these grants is something else. Looking at each individual grant, the specifications of the requirement, the timeline for expenditure and reporting, and really making sure that we are maximizing every dollar is important. In addition to these monthly monitoring sessions with the principals at the school level, we have a district level team that meets just to look at the full landscape of this. And again, wanting to be the best stewards of these funds, we are leaving no dollar unspent. So there is this cascade that happens. For example, the 98C grant, we know the number just this week. Now we can make some decisions about how to maximize that because it has a shorter expenditure timeline.
Go even further on that, Penny. So we're heading budget season. The legislators adopt a budget in June. Then they send it to MDE to figure the rules out. The MDE creates, with their very limited staff, some rules, and about somewhere in October, November, we get notified of the rules. Then we all figure out how the rules and how to spend it, and then finally we receive the funds. So there's a lot to
Yeah.
what Penny was saying.
Yeah, and I will just assure you all that the needs assessment and the ongoing needs assessment is really what's guiding our work. So when we had our initial ESSER planning and envisioned what we would use the ESSER grant for, now after that we've learned that 98C is available. And again, given that expenditure timeline, we may shift activities to different grants, knowing what those requirements are, wanting to be fully open and transparent with you all about what that is, which is part of why we have these conversations today, and we'll continue to update that. Brian, I think, has a few comments about some of the numbers and timelines as well.
Not to belabor this, but come March, expect some significant movements within your budget, what we planned versus what you're going to see in both revenues and expenditures as well too. To Penny's point, I'll just use one of these grant lines as a case. So Section 98C was not something that we had anticipated at all. We learned about it in the fall. We know that there's going to be a minimum of around $275-ish thousand coming to us. And if you caught Kim's statement, that's if every single school district in the state applied. We have a poll going in our office and joking about how many. Based on anecdotal survey data of talking to colleagues, we believe it's less than half of the schools in the state did. I would not be shocked if that came in closer to $1 million. And that has to be spent by July of this year, and we don't know how much that is. And so some of the activities that we had planned in ESSER can be expended to 98, which would make sense for us to move the activity from there to 98C. So to Penny's point, when we're moving funds around, it's to be the best stewards of those dollars, carry out what the wishes of our staff and stakeholders were, but maximizing every single cent that we have. So in March, you're going to see a lot of line changes in things that we typically don't do, but that's due to some of these funds that have popped up. They're blessings, but it's some counting stuff on the back end, and that's what our job is. Our job is to take the red tape, decipher it, and make sure that all of our stakeholders can do great things with those dollars. And so that's what we're working hard behind the scenes to do. But don't be shocked. In March and in June, when you see significant movement within these pots, that's not us trying to be deceitful. That's us trying to maximize and put these dollars to the best use possible and elongate the maximum positive effects of the dollars for as long as we possibly can.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Penny.
I don't have any questions after those comments. You answered them clearly. Any questions, comments from the other board members?
Make a couple really quick comments. Kim, thank you. This is extremely helpful. You know, as a board member, we're none of us are educational experts, but what I look for as a board member is, you know, how is the plan developed? You talked about multi-stakeholder input, community support, parents, teachers, staff, so thank you. Also look for how do we measure success, and you talked about monthly monitoring, quick to change if something's not working, and evidence-based practices. So I appreciate all that input, and I'm excited about the future because I think what Brian said, this really is a blessing right now to kind of experiment with more than one thing at a time, and it'll be exciting as we move forward to see which programs we want to make permanent to really achieve the most with that dollar for our student achievement and student growth. So thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
I had a couple questions.
Yeah.
Well,
I thought
Kim,
you did, Brad. Yeah.
we've
Come
got
on
a couple
back.
questions.
sorry.
First of all, that was a lot of information, and there is no way I'm going to attempt to write all that down. So, are we going to get that sent to us, and/or is that something in a version of that that's going to get posted to the webpage?
Yeah, it gets posted part of the board meeting. That PowerPoint will be there, and we certainly could send it to you as well. And, yeah, she did state the highlights of a lot of it. It's hard to explain all of what's going on, the movement behind there. But I think part of the point I wanted you to hear was, you know, you've heard a little bit like the SSTs were mentioned in there on when mandatory social awareness. There's a lot going on out there in our district. You know, I hear that sometimes the comments is, you know, post-COVID, what have you really done to intervene with kids? And there's a ton going on out there. Doesn't mean it's perfect, doesn't mean it's going to capture it up. And again, I think we knew after post-COVID, it's not a sprint to catch kids up. It's a marathon, and it's the end point always where we can get them to. And so, and it definitely hurt the more at-risk kids than the high-end kids. And so it's still a targeted group in there, I think, that we have to work at. You know, Kim mentioned in-school suspensions. Well, it's probably the wrong terminology now, but we're keeping kids in school and not trying to suspend. And that's been a goal of mine probably. Well, heck, Brian was a high school principal hearing about me from it, and we continue. I'd love to see the day where there is no out-of-school suspension. I'm not sure we're ever going to get there. There's always going to be some egregious behaviors that are going to require something removable. But I think, and Jeff's going to start tracking some data. He's meeting with the principals on it. We've made huge gains in keeping the kids in because we're only compounding the problems when I ask at-risk students out. Some of these funds are allowing us to do that. And so, and then to your point, Phil, we're going to have to measure all that and figure out which one's done, and hence why it's important to keep a healthy general fund to be able to support a program, because when you don't, I know there's a lot of people that say they got money, why aren't they spending it on this, spending it on that, because there's why. When these things go away, you're going to want some of these things to continue. Sorry to call that away from you.
No, that's fine. So I think we're all crystal clear on ESSER funds, their shelf life. 1's done, 2's done, 3 will be done. And this could be a Brian, Penny, Mike question across the board. Is there something on your watch list that you think is going to go away that will affect any of our new services, such as summer school and a lot of these things that we're focusing our dollars on? Are we in jeopardy of losing those or having to think of other ways to fund them? Because we have discovered that we need them and that they can't be all supported by grants.
I'm going to go first, Brad, only, and then let them weigh in, because it's all going to be theirs at some point here soon. But a lot of what you do in any district, and it is an MPS thing, is we like to add people. We are a people business. And so when we added people, and I've done this all the way back from Obama funds that came in and flush districts, and we had to figure out how to sustain and remove things. So I've always been taught that you need to have a plan on how you're going to remove people and do it with dignity and class and keep the right people. So my belief is many of the positions that may some way get dwarfed or moved we'll have enough vacant positions that they could get moved into your classroom. Now, that employee may decide, Kim probably once was in the classroom, she's in this position, not saying hers going away, I'm using her example. But if it did, we would have a landing spot for Kim, who's a good educator in there. Now, at some point, she may choose she doesn't want to go back to classroom and find those, but you know you've got a lot of vacancies, and you may have trouble filling those vacancies with the teacher shortage. So I think a lot of it, you'll be able to absorb. Some of the programming may have to be morphed or more efficient to keep it going. So you got multiple tutoring programs before, after school, summer. Some of that, Brian and I have been through this because we had this in Algonac where we had to sit down with administrators and decide, was our summer program better than our after-school tutoring program? And we used data and we came to a conclusion of why that was, and we chose one or the over. Or you just simply make them a little smaller and target it more at the kids that need. But yeah, are you approaching a time where some will have to change or go away? Absolutely.
It's part of why we're really intentional about the monitoring. And we have a spreadsheet where we have tracked sort of the gold standard evidence-based practice and what we anticipate those outcomes to be, so we'll be able to make some of those decisions. I will say we have been very transparent with all of the new hires that it was grant funding and that much of it was short-run grant funding, although relayed what Mike said as well. Your advocacy for 31A was really important. That will be a landing spot for some of these evidence-based practices that yield the outcomes we want, whether they're positions or whether it's summer school or other activities.
And 31A is not going to go away.
Right.
Probably not going to get smaller. Title will not go away.
Right.
Probably not get smaller.
And I think 31N, which is
That's
the
where I was
mental
gonna
health
go.
grant.
You know that one better
I
than me.
think we keep seeing a bump in that every year, Brian.
Yeah, you're right. Brad, you asked me a question, I don't remember how many meetings back, but when Penny and I had talked about ESSER before, you said, what's your plan for sustainability going forward? That was when we had talked about 31A becoming fully funded. Kim showed you a number that was approximately $2.8 million. When we were not funded at that level, our annual allocation was around $700,000, so we're about $2.1 million more than we had in the past. When that bill was passed and that money came in this year, we looked at each other and we had to practice great restraint to not hire more people immediately because we knew that that had to be a landing spot for these when these dollars were gone. So that's where we're making calculated decisions about what to spend those dollars on now so that we do have a landing spot for what Penny's team and the assessment team comes out as the programs that are reaping the most yield, to Phil's point. I think the other point that I want to make is something that Mike has taught me along the way, and as a young principal I was naive, but now that I've sat in the finance chair for 4 years now, if you're going to advocate, please continue to advocate that they will build these things into our foundation allowance rather than categorize them in grants. When they categorize these in grants, they often come with rule books that are this deep that will put hands behind your back. And it also will sometimes come with unrealistic timelines to them, like I said with 98C. Again, we don't even know how much money we're getting, and Santa's already come down the chimney. And we're already working on budget amendments, and it's just unrealistic. If they would build these into the foundation allowance, that allows us to make decisions, and you as a board to help guide those decisions on what we can do without restriction. And that's where I would continue. Instead of earmarking dollars into these grant lines, which you saw Kim present, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, by the way.
Yeah.
The amount of grants and the grant work that we do, it's all consuming. And so if they would give that to us and keep building healthy, generous foundation allowance increases, it would give our team the ability to put those dollars to use in a much more flexible way. That would be my advocacy point. I don't know if Mike agrees with me or not, but
Yeah, and that's why, Phil, we sent you to get involved with MSB and MSA because they lobby for those things. We lobby always, less category goes more into the foundation. We don't always get it, but I think right now we probably will in this budget. It could be not huge in this budget. I don't think they're going to spend as much as they did in the previous one, but it's still going to be a favorable budget, so we need to advocate for those.
In all of those, I know it's a broad question, is there any recruiting dollars that we can use?
So it could be. So a lot of it's flexible. We haven't necessarily chose to use a lot of it there, I don't believe. You could get to that point. So as bad as the teacher shortage is, we're still doing pretty well. There's areas that will struggle a little bit. in, and then, of course, we're spending more dollars because we're hiring experienced people from other districts because we're a place they want to come to. And so that's not necessarily good for your general fund, long run. So, but right now, we could put some into recruitment. You are beginning to see some high poverty districts begin to put signing bonuses or housing allowances, and I know I won't be here that long, but I'm a little leery of you putting that in and trying to sustain that and figure out how to do that as well. I'm not sure education should go there in that field, but I guess I don't know the future here where that will go. But you're seeing Grand Rapids and Detroit Public and some of those that have severe shortages. When I say severe, I started in Houston ISD and thought I got hired on the spot. Well, I must be really good. I didn't know that they run every school year with 20% classrooms vacant with certified teachers. That's what Grand Rapids and Detroit's doing right now. They have 20-30% of their classrooms vacant right now.
I know it was not too long ago, we had the discussion of the full-time substitutes. And I don't know exactly where we stood.
So we finally made some progress, Brad. It was a year ago, and we hired a couple, but as soon as we hired them, they went in and took
Straight to the
positions.
classroom.
So we know with the last collective bargaining with the teachers, if you recall, one of the ways to get the planning time that the elementary teachers will want it is we had to increase auxiliaries to get it. And we asked for time because it's a challenge. And so recently we were able to hire, and Brian, jump in here, it'll be a couple, 3 or 4 auxiliary teachers are now full-time subs for us, and then they will roll into those vacant positions next year. And we'll continue to try to do that. So they were student teachers. We got them right after at semester graduation. So we'll continue to try that. I think 3 or 4.
Those are actually the ones that are on your agenda this evening.
Okay.
Those are 2 music teachers that we have hired to be classroom teachers in 23-24, but we've signed them now, and they are full-time subs for us. So
Now, there's a cost associated with that. But
they report to admin center every day, and we deploy them where as needed. But it was a part of our efforts to go out to the labor pool, get them first, and we know that we always could use substitute teachers. So we have 2 right now. We have 1 that is pending, and we have 2 more that are coming in for interviews next week, all music and art teachers for the 23-24 school year. So we'll be close, Brad, to that 5 or 6 that we were looking at. Kind of a roundabout way to get there, but we're getting there.
Okay.
Great questions. Any other comments? Okay, thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Great discussion. Okay, moving on, we're at item 9.2, an action item. This is the expulsion of student B. Mr. Jaster.
Thank you, Mr. McFarland. The board subcommittee met December 19th, 2022 regarding student B and to consider expulsion for the remainder of the 22-23 school year. Student B was originally suspended for 10 days for illegal possession, including distribution on school property. It's the recommendation of the board subcommittee that student B be expelled for the remainder of this school year, 22-23. Copy of the full resolution is in your agenda packet, and this does require a roll call vote.
Thank you. I will accept the motion.
Make a motion to expel student B for the remainder of the 2022-23 school year.
Motion by Mr. Roush, support by Mr. Hatfield. Any additional discussion regarding this item, 9.2? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
All right. President McFarland.
Yes.
Vice President Roush.
Yes.
Secretary Hatfield is yes. Member Baker.
Yes.
Member Blasey.
Yes.
Member Ringgold.
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we are at item 10 on our agenda, request to address the board. I do only have 1 name on our list, but I know a number of you came in after the meeting had started, so I will give you an opportunity to address the board if you choose. However, right now I'm going to call Mr. Oliver. Happy New Year, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. I was here once before. I'm just continuing this on. I'm here to ask why it wasn't reported to the police or child protection agency that I was displaying erotic and pornographic sexual behaviors when I was a student in grade school in the 1960s. What I was doing in grade school was reenacting sex abuse, and this is highlighted on page 106 of the book, Sex Abuse of Young Children. Recently, I was talking with a man about the sexual abuse that I believe happened to me, and he made a telling comment. He said, if you're around children and you're swearing, there's a good chance the children are going to start swearing themselves. And this is what I was doing. I was involved with erotic sexual behaviors, and this could only come about if I had been molested. And I believe I was molested before the age of 6. Dr. Colin Ross, a psychiatrist out of Dallas, Texas, says that the same thing about reenacting. If you're taught to hunt and fish as a child, you grow up, the chances are you're going to hunt and fish if you're in a hunt and fishing family. And I'm saying that the behaviors I displayed of erotic sexual behaviors was a result of what I had been taught. And so my point is that I didn't one day decide on my own when I was a student in grade school to get involved in these behaviors on my own, which by blaming me and saying that I did this on my own, there was no need for an investigation. So the police weren't contacted. Mrs. Jones, my 6th grade teacher, saw me reenacting these behaviors when I was a grade school student. And she told me to go in the bathroom and clean up the semen. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what sex was. So I feel she should have reported it to the police, what I was doing. And if that had happened, then I would have been treated. I was never treated for what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing was erotic sexual behaviors. It was normal to me. So I thought it was just normal behavior that everyone did this. And Les Harris, the Utah Foster Care Foundation, says that children do, in his presentation, Caring for the Sexually Reactive Child, says that children will rub their genitals against objects, and he says they may not be aware they're doing this. That's what I was doing when I was a student in grade school. I didn't even know what I was doing. And I feel that the Midland Public Schools should have reported, especially Mrs. Jones, what I was doing, and she didn't do it.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to address the board that did not get a chance to put their name on the list? Okay, we'll close the floor. I'm sorry. Yes, please.
Hello, Jennifer Vanette, MPS parent. I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Roush, Mr. Lauterbach, and Ms. Ringgold on your election, and it was a very clear and decisive vote. And so I hope that this will be a very productive time on the school board for you all. And I just want to also thank all of the school board members and the administrators, because you all have a very hard job. Those of you on the board are doing this as volunteers, but all of you do so much for this community at large, for our students. And I know sometimes these things have been contentious in the past, so I want to start us off this year to say thank you. So,
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, the floor is closed.
If you want, anybody else wants to come up and do that, that's great. Yes, I'm done.
Next up, we have 11.1, another action item. This is major change proposals. Ms. Miller-Nelson.
Good evening. Yes, we presented these 2 proposals last month for information. They're back for action this month. 2 proposals. One is to create a pre-algebra 7 and 8 course for our middle schools to create a very clear path for preparation for Algebra 1 success. The other is to create the Future Teachers of Tomorrow course for our high schools, which we heard about that grant tonight. You can see those dollar values listed in your agenda. The cost of each of these proposals includes all of the anticipated expenses, curriculum development, staff development, and the student and staff materials. Expenses, of course, will be contingent upon approval of the district budget later in the year. And we will get these, with your approval, implemented starting next fall for students who are enrolled. I'll just note that we did apply for that grant, which will offset the cost for that Future Teachers of Tomorrow course.
Okay, thank you. I will accept the motion for item 11.1.
I will move the approval of item 11.1, major change proposals for action.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Hatfield, support by Mrs. Ringgold. Any additional discussion regarding 11.1? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Moving on, item 12, finance, facilities, and operations. Please note there are no study committee minutes to read. Going right into item 12.1, this is an action item, Auto Tech Program Equipment Purchase. And this is Mr. Bruton.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. A quick update before I get into this, because this is another 61C funded project. If you remember the last board meeting, we had a shear and also a bandsaw. The bandsaw was a contingency. If approved, that was approved. So we have placed that order, and this item has been approved as well too, so this will not be a contingency. There was a review done with the Auto Tech program, and as you can see by the very detailed attachment that our teacher has gone through and requested from 61C funds updated storage cabinetry and hundreds of various tools to the amount of $65,322.12. We are recommending that we issue a purchase order to Snap-on Industrial of Crystal Lake, Illinois for that amount, and as I just stated, this is 61C funded, and with your approval tonight, we will issue that purchase order.
Excellent, thank you, Brian. Okay, I will accept the motion for item 12.1.
Make a motion to approve item 12.1 for the equipment in the amount of $65,322.12.
Support. Support.
Motion by Mr. Roush, support by Mrs. Baker. Any additional discussion for item 12.1?
Just a question for Penny. This doesn't really have a ton to do with item 12.1, but with cars changing every day, how do we keep the teacher up to date on continuing ed?
Yeah, it's a great question. All of our career and tech ed teachers have required professional learning. We really encourage them to participate in that. They go to their professional organization workshops and meetings, and we try to get them out here to local businesses to stay in touch. Actually, one of our greater challenges is having recent and new enough vehicles in our shop that they can work on. We get great donations, but they're old technology, and so it's that back and forth of just trying to make sure that we have the latest vehicles for them to work on as well. So we're looking at kind of revitalizing our work-based learning program to get them out into local business as well. It's way more than you asked for, but it's a challenge, and we're trying to figure it out.
Our instructor has the same certification any dealership mechanic has. He has
Yes.
an ASA and ASA
Okay.
certification. He's highly concurrent.
Great question, Phil. Any other questions?
My world, right? I get excited about stuff like that.
Yes, you do.
I would just comment,
I might get more excited about that than books. How's that?
I would just comment how fun to be a teacher and be able to pick out $65,000+ of supplies. So that's incredible.
As I understand it, Penny, they all have a committee that they work with too, each of the CTE teachers that has business members and community members and stuff too, right? So
Correct.
I mean, this would be
Every
not just the teacher,
yes,
right?
every
That's-
state-approved career and tech ed program has an advisory committee that is to have a parent, student representative, local business and industry, post-secondary partners. And actually, one of the requirements to apply for 61C is that your advisory committee reviews your request and endorses it. And then it works through the process, ultimately getting to Brian.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries, thank you. Next up, item 12.2, this is Regional Enhancement Millage Renewal Resolution.
Still Brian, we'll let him have it.
All right.
We are seeking your approval this evening to submit a request to the MCESA to put a regional enhancement tax millage renewal proposal. This is the current initiative that is still ongoing, and all of the entities within Midland County need to have their board sign on to a resolution, send it to the ESA to be able to put this onto the May ballot. As a reminder for us and the impact in Midland Public, this is a 1.5 mil renewal, and to us, it means a little bit north of $3.5 million annually in revenue, and it is support that we greatly, greatly appreciate from our community to be able to provide enhanced services for our students. These are unrestricted funds that allow us to do a lot of great things.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, I will accept a motion for item 12.2.
I'll make a motion that we approve the regional enhancement millage renewal.
Support?
Motion by Mr. Hatfield, support by Mrs. Ringgold. Any additional discussion regarding item 12.2? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up, and we are nearing the end of our motions, I promise. Item 12.3, this is Series 3 Bond Authorization Resolution. Mr. Bruton.
Sure. We're seeking your approval this evening to give us official authorization to sell the final series of our 2015 bonds. If you recall, it was broken up into a Series 1, a Series 2, and Series 3. This is the smallest of those series. It is $8.3 million, and those $8.3 million are largely earmarked for technology replacements and busing replacements as well, too. We plan to do the sale in either April or May, and this is step one, where you're giving this authorization resolution, and then we'll continue to work with our financial manager and our counsel to prepare ourselves for the sale of these bonds in May.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. I will accept the motion for item 12.3.
Make a motion to approve the sale of Series 3 bond and approve the resolution.
Support?
Motion by Mr. Roush, support by Mr. Hatfield. Any additional discussion regarding 12.3? I'm sorry, Lynn, did you say something? Oh. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, and I believe our final action item of the night is a gift of monetary value of $12,422.74. Mr. Bruton.
Thank you. I don't need to repeat the amount, but the golf alumni, spearheaded by John Ginaw, put together a campaign to raise funds for a golf simulator for Midland High. Because of the dollar amount, we're asking for your official acceptance of that gift so we can honor that officially.
Excellent. I will accept the motion for 12.4.
Make a motion to accept the gift outlined in 12.4 of the golf simulator for Midland High.
Support?
Motion by Mr. Roush, support by Mr. Ringgold. Any additional discussion regarding item 12.4?
So 12.4 is 12.4.
Yeah.
So where is this going to live?
It already lives in the locker room area by concession stand in the stadium area.
The field house right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we'll fit all season, but that's where it's at right now. We'll continue to work with Eric. This was a little out of order, so how it occurred, but yep, we'll keep monitoring, figuring out how it works. It's a good thing overall. We just got to figure out where and how. Field house right now.
Okay.
They're using it and it's great.
Not a bad problem to have.
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up, information only. Mr. Bruton.
Thank you. We are acknowledging 3 gifts totaling $4,075, and you can see outlined in your agenda, those gifts support Dow Athletics, the German Club, and also the National Art Society. And as is tradition, the donors will be acknowledged both in the broadcast credits and through your official board correspondence.
All right, thank you very much. Next up, item 13.1. This is letters to the Board of Education from one individual, Mark Hoon. Next up, item 13.2, and this is listed in the agenda, information only, letters to the Board of from the Board of Education to a number of individuals and entities as listed. Item 14 is a list of our remaining Board of Education meetings ending December 18, 2023. Please note, April 17th is our budget workshop, which will flow right into our regular meeting, beginning just like tonight at 6:30 PM. Next up, we have item 15.1. Any points of clarification that we've gone over tonight? No? Okay. I am going to then turn the floor over to Mr. Sheriff.
As always, you have some wonderful recognition in front of you from our students, staff, and others, and so we appreciate all you do. As Mrs. Finette, I don't know if she left, said tonight, it's not been the most enjoyable time being a board member, but you guys have done a great job through that. I laugh, and you know I'm talking about being a short timer here, but I've probably worked with 60 board members, and you guys have been through some of the toughest times, and you held strong, so I appreciate that. As superintendent, I think everyone behind you does. I've heard it from the teaching staff when I've gone out to buildings and all those pieces, and you may not always hear that, so. Mr. Ringgold, first board meeting gets recognition, look at that right off, and I can't promise you will get that every month, Mr. Ringgold, but you do have the first month on that. Yeah. While you were recognizing gifts, we wrote to you about student meal debt. We need to recognize all the donators who help pay off student meal debt, and hopefully that can continue as we go forward. So no meal debt for first semester was all covered. And there's still some funds left if they hold well, and we add maybe just a little, we'll probably cover the whole year. That's all.
Okay. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Roush, support by Mr. Hatfield. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Too bad. Adjourn. Thank you, everybody.